So Sue, a big thank you again for chairing tonight. I do appreciate it. Over to you.
Lovely, Martin, my pleasure. And it's great to work with such enthused people. I know 100% more about data analytics than I did before I met this panel, and your good self, Martin, so thank you for that. What I'd like to do first off, obviously this is the session Data Analytics and Project Controls, Opportunity or Threat. That's what we're going to focus on. I've got 5 themes I'd like to take my wonderful panel through. First off, I'd just like to introduce myself and then ask each one of the panel to introduce themselves as well. So I'm Sue Kershaw, Managing Director of Transportation at Costain. I'm also the President of the Association of Project Management and visiting professor at the Bartlett School of UCL. So now I'll hand over to Breda, please.
Hi everybody, lovely to meet you all this evening and thanks for participating. I'm Breda Ryan, I head up program controls for the function of the Major Programs and Projects group at Jacobs. I've been around project controls for quite a long time, been a member of the APM SIG for project controls as well, and currently supporting the BSI development standard for project controls.
Lovely, thank you very much, Breda. Now moving on to Sue Simonite.
Hi, a few faces I recognise looking at the video screens. So Sue Simonite, I am the Project Management and Control Capability Director at BAE Systems, been with the organisation for a very long time now, and pleased to say that I've spent most of my career in some way, shape or form around project controls. Like Breda, I've also supported the APM Project Control SIG for a number of years, and I'm really looking forward to for the panel discussion tonight in terms of how we take this forward.
Excellent, thank you, Sue. And over to Jo Jolly.
Thank you, Sue. It's Jo Jolly here. I'm Deputy Director at the Environment Agency, and I lead a team of programme and contract managers, primarily focused on the delivery of flood risk management projects across the country. And my involvement with data analytics and project controls is really at the early stages, although I've been working in project delivery for many years. And as you mentioned earlier, Sue, through meeting Martin, my knowledge and awareness has grown dramatically. I'm involved with the task force, and think about some of the questions that are coming up. It would be great to explore how people start to get involved, reflecting the part of the journey that I'm on at the moment. And so it would be good to explore some of that to help people get involved in understanding more about this topic.
I think you're so right. It's such an exciting new industry to be part of. It's always good to be in things that are growing, isn't it, rather than things that are just stable. It's fantastic. Thank you, Jo. And last but not least, Zoe Madams.
Thank you. I'm PMO Services Director for MACE. I've been enrolled in project controls since about 1992, when it wasn't even project controls. So it's been quite a journey. So it's great to be part of this and seeing how we're evolving over time. So yeah, I've covered all elements of controls in some shape or form. I've not met Breda yet, but I've been involved in the BSI standard as well. So good to be part of today.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you and welcome as well, Zoe. So we'll kick off then for the first question, and this is to everyone on the panel. So maybe if you put your hand up to know that you want to answer it, I can call you in. So the first question is, how do data analytics and project controls fit?
That's a big broad question. Big broad question. I'm quite happy to take that one.
Please do, Sue.
I think it's something that our understanding of is evolving at this moment in time. That's certainly what I would take away from the conversations we're having within our organisation. We absolutely see the relationship between the two, and we see that actually there's a real need for increasing the skills and capability across the organisation, not just in project management, but more broadly throughout our other functions. And we think, there is a need to look at how do we bring them closer together So are they the same? Are they different? I think that's part of the journey that we're on to understand.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that.
I was trying to look for the hands up, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's a real one. It's not virtual.
Yeah, that's a real one. We've been talking about this quite a lot, actually, and I think the data has always been there, and I think that's the thing that we've got. The digital data is sat in all these amazing tools and systems, and it's been part of our ways of working for such a long time. And I think that the vital part of this is how we bring it all together, actually how we use our data properly, how we make it more mobile, how we make it more accessible. And I say to my team, we talk a lot about when was the last time you went into a bank. I mean, everything we do is virtually, and our data is held, in small little devices. Yet, we seem to always revert back in construction and engineering, to pieces of paper and, to completely alien ways of working to what the world is doing now. So I think this is really important to be part of how we, we make this more modern, really, to a certain extent, just bring it up to the same level as how we're managing data in every other element.
I think that's so true. And it's looking at the data you need to look at to make decisions, not the whole thing, because otherwise our brains would blow up. So I don't know, Breda, have you got any thoughts on it?
Oh, absolutely. I think they're a perfect fit for each other. As Zoe and Sue have said, we live in the world of data, in the world of project controls and program controls, and it was never any different. But it's always been the discipline of a few and not of the many, and it's been traditionally hard to receive and obtain and get access to your controls data. You're the recipient in a project environment of it being issued to you. You put stuff into the machine, it does something, and something comes back out. And you might not like what comes back out, and you might not agree with it. So we've been always on this journey, and the push-pull of info into a system and info out of the system. And I think we're on the cusp of something really interesting and fascinating as we progress through this. We traditionally live in a world where we process data and issue it out once a week or once a fortnight or once a month, depending on the reporting cycle. And we're moving into the world where everything is instant and automatic and updated and more predictive than it's ever been. So in the control space, we're not quite like the banking industry where every transaction is on your phone and beeping at you the minute it has been transacted. We're a little bit behind that. And we do recognize that, and there's an awful lot of dynamics going on in our industry to try and push that forward. So for me, it's really fascinating how we're moving into a real-time project data world. And we do need the analytics in the background to support and shape that. And we do need protocols, and we do need methodology and routines that support that. And all of those will be driven by better IT and better database and data warehouse management. So for me, it's really, really interesting. We don't have to live in the land of the monthly report update cycle churned through for quite some time. I'm not saying we're going to be there anytime soon, but I do think we are on a fast-paced journey like we've never been on before.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Breda. And Joe, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, just recognizing a lot of that journey that Breda describes. It was great to hear Zoe talk, confidently about data quality. I think that's something.
We're losing you, Joe, I'm afraid. Yeah, I think we've lost Joe temporarily. Maybe, Martin, should we go to the Mentimeter again?
Back.
Yeah, just give me a second and I shall get it live. Right.
Thank you.
I thought it was me that was just having trouble with their IT.
There we go. Right. So, next question on Mentimeter. Over to you, Sue.
So, to what extent is data part of your strategy? Should we have a think about this? Oh, we've got it in already. You guys have been working in the background, haven't you? I'm going to have to multitask on this one. I think, yeah, the experimenting. Oh, changes quickly. I think this is really interesting, 'cause especially this strange world we live in now, we do experiment. I mean, I think we've all got much better IT skills because we had to from working at home, and working remotely and working on Teams. And I find I've gone completely paperless since the 23rd of March, and it's liberating. So I think we are experimenting, we are being bolder, and our world around us is really making us more agile, making decisions faster and making bolder decisions. So I think the experimenting one is a good one, Martin.
Cool.
Okay, so how are you using the data analytics inconsistently?
I think some problems with the mask there.
The mask doesn't add up, does it? We've broken Mentimeter.
Get on this, right?
Yeah. Not quite helping the whole data quality.
Learn something new every day.
No wonder no one trusts the data.
Okay, so maybe we'll flip back to the old-fashioned questions, Martin, just for a second, shall we? To the panel. This to me is interesting because I'm trying to convince clients to think differently for my business. So asking the panel, what's the best way to convince clients that they need data analytics to make better decisions? How do we do that?
I think, I mean, for me, it's just proving where it's worked before. And I, you know, we've had extreme success, and, you know, there's been points of failure in lots of the programs that I'm sure we've all worked in some shape or form, but actually proving where the data and the choices we make because of the data have driven the right decision. And then actually when poor decisions we made around data, or they haven't done it correctly, and actually that's led to failure. And I think it's only really that can really, well, from my perspective, it can really drive it forward. And I think now we have more and more case studies and good data and decisions made off good data that help that story and that agenda. But for me, it's always been about the good past experiences that we've had.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's really interesting. Breda, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think this is inextricably linked with the question of why does a client need project controls in the first place? Mm-hmm. For many, many years, we're constantly justifying the need for controls, the need for PMO. And now I don't think there's any argument about the need for data analytics. So it's that needs to come in our bag of tricks, in our kit bag, ready-made almost. But they sometimes forget that there is a journey to go on. You can't just have a dashboard and magic something out of it without all of the underlying processes and data and rigor that goes with generating that data. So everybody's wowed by the dashboard, which sometimes worries me. We now need to step them back. Absolutely need the dashboard, but the stuff that goes to the dashboard is how you actually get some value out of the whole process. So for me, it's not either or, and it's not really a necessity to convince much these days. I think many clients are absolutely in the space where they are enabling their IT and their platforms to be data ready and move very much into a digital world, moving very much into a BI linked with the BIM analytics world. So of challenge ahead, but the magic still needs to happen with us managing a fundamental industry change on processes and data management underneath all of that.
Yeah, I think that's so key, and also to clearly specify what you want analysed and why you want it analysed. I think we have a tendency, we're having all of this data, so let's look at it all, and then we're back to the old paper copies of the monthly reports, aren't we, where you twig after the second time of going through them that's actually what's not in there is really important. So I think, yeah, point very, very well made. Sue, over to you.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, I'm kind of going to build on all the points that have been discussed, because I think I absolutely recognise that data is critical for us with our other projects and programmes, and the major programmes that we're delivering are high complexity, off the scale in some cases. And I think the bit for me that I think we've got to get underneath, and where project controls can really help, is in that upfront planning of the P3, of the project, of the programme, of the portfolio, and making sure that we're putting enough emphasis in terms of understanding what we want to measure, how we want to measure, what are the right things to measure. And we've got to plan all of that thinking in, and bring all of that thinking right to the early phases of the programme design. And my challenge would be is, are we spending enough effort through our planning of major proposals, thinking about the data and thinking about the end in mind? And that would be my challenge back, about how do we do that more effectively.
Sue, that's a fantastic point, because I'm getting really excited. There's an initiative by the Institution of Civil Engineers to actually establish systems thinking into major projects and programs, and we hope we've found a prototype, really interesting project, to embed it right at the beginning, so you can get the client requirements, you can validate it, you can make sure the outputs, there's no surprises, and the discipline helps you deliver. And do you know what, I think if we pull it off on this job, everyone's going to do it. They're just going to, to your original point, Zoe, it's evidenced, it helps you deliver, and that's just an absolutely huge win.
And to add to that, just one final thing, Sue, I think we've got to stop thinking of this as just our own organisations. We've got to think about this in a more broader sense. So it's not just in it's our supply chain, it's our partners, it's our customers, and how do we collectively start to think about data, and how the data transitions through all of those entities to actually inform the decisions that we want to make effectively through each of those interfaces and interdependencies.
Yeah, and it's very enlightened people who get that. I remember when Mike Brown was commissioner for TfL, all the TfL data was openly shared with anyone who wanted to use it, any startups who wanted to do their own apps. And what a vision that is. Most people are going, no, it's mine, you're not having any of my data. So it's a change in psyche, isn't it, as well as I think a way of working. And I think one of the side effects really of the current situation we're in is people are genuinely working together. The institutional barriers are coming down, the organisation ones are coming down. It's fantastic. Okay, I was just saying, have we heard from Joe at all?
I'm limping along here on my really tragic broadband. I'm so sorry. It's not normally quite this bad.
Oh, don't worry, it
I'm
knows,
mortified.
doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it just? So sorry. And so sorry, I am playing catch up a little bit, but just so I was particularly picking up on Sue's point about the early planning and the advantages of the time taken to be doing that well, and where project controls and great use of data analytics can help at that stage. Because one thing I know we've struggled with for years, and I've talked to Martin about it, is around lessons learned. Really getting great lessons learned data quality, but also building that in really well at the start of projects. And I think that the bit I was going to touch on earlier was around the real benefits of project data analytics being able to do the things that humans just don't do well. And I think that was one of the things that really struck me when I first spoke to Martin last year. But then just thinking about how we don't build in our own biases to some of those sort of automated processes, and how we safeguard against some of those things. But the advantages of building things in early in a project is undoubtedly the greatest advantage. And some of the things we're particularly looking at is around low carbon solutions. We've committed to be net zero carbon by 2030. And that all of those big opportunities only come in, you know, very, very early in project planning. Yeah, you know, it's very hard to do it later in the project life cycle.
It is. And I was really heartened to hear that the IPA, the Infrastructure Projects Authority, is going to republish it was project initiation route map. It's now called the route map. And that's got fantastic thinking in the front. You know, spend 80% of your time and effort on the planning, and it takes you through various little guides to help you make sure you don't miss anything out. And I think, you know, it's going to transform projects and programs delivery in the UK.
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you, Joe. I guess the next question is, it actually leads on quite well in terms of collaboration. So a lot of collaboration's gone on to produce the white paper within the task force, and Martin, you mentioned collaboration with APM, MPA, and various organisations. So how do you think that collaboration is actually going to help in project delivery? How's it going to be translated? Because we can always see the good words. We've read the white paper, which is superb. We've got the action list, but to me, it's the how. I wonder if we could just pick that up. So, Joe, would you like to pick that up?
Yeah, in particularly around the endeavours of the white paper, do you mean, Sue?
Yes.
Well? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you touched on there around, you know, open data and data sharing. And again, I know it's something Martin's been, you know, heavily promoting and continues to. And I think if, you know, if a work stream that I'm involved in is around data quality, and, you know, so obviously improving our data quality, getting more consistent standards across the industry, and then therefore being able to share better is going to be fundamental. But I mean, again, my experience at the moment is that we're starting on a collaborative framework arrangement. So we're starting to work collaboratively in our organisation, and I think we're at the early stages of that. You know, it is quite a shift from a sort of more transactional way of working to a more collaborative way of working, and seeing that you know, even the cultural change and the need for people to let go of old ways of working and move forward, it is quite tough. You know, it is difficult. So then I think, you know, for this to be that next level up, you know, it really is bold and ambitious to be working cross-sector, cross-industry, sharing data, but that, you know, that will be the power of it. I think is when we're truly sharing our data collaboratively. I think it will break down so many silos and so many barriers that we currently face, and so many repeated mistakes, quite frankly. So yeah, I'd love to see the learning coming through.
That's brilliant.
And I think from some of the major projects and major programs that we all work on, there's still those boundaries around, you know, our supply chain and our clients. You know, we all seem to own our own data. No one wants to share it. You know, and we talk about these integrated roles and how we're all going to work together and how we're going to share them, but we've not quite tipped that balance yet. And I think we all play a part in every big program and project we work on. You know, that we include our supply chain, we include our clients, you know, that level of transparency and that openness. You know, we all try and do it, but then there's always someone that wants to hold on to their data for whatever reason, commercial. But we need to make sure that actually the end game is something we're all going to benefit from, you know, and it does support on time, on delivery, quality, and all those good things. And there's no commercial edge to it. And I think that once they start seeing the benefits, but I think the transparency between our contractors and our clients, I think that's such an important journey that we need to go on and make sure that we've got that driven across our big major schemes, especially.
That's lovely, Zoe. Thank you.
I'd like to build on that. So absolutely, I agree with everything that's been said before, and I think we're on a journey not to influence clients as such, but to influence our peers in industry to be more collaborative around the data sharing mechanism. I think the promotion of a data trust in this context is absolutely vital and helpful for our future. We're all working with benchmark norms that are outdated, and we need to replenish and refresh those. So we should be able to access through these various organizations and through a data trust what the current industry norms are for specific parameters, whether that's for cost, for resourcing, for organizational models, or for estimated schedule durations, or even for risk parameters for specific of complexities of projects. I think there's a wealth of information that we can tap into and access and learn from. And then when you relay the possibility of the machine learning and AI and predictability models that can overlay on top of that, that's when I think it becomes really, really interesting. And that's not to say no organization will have a competitive edge, because the value will be in something different, not in the data hoarding element of it. I'm not sure that anybody has really made money out of hoarding data in that context. So for me, the value is in what can we deliver more efficiently and more effectively for the benefit of our wider client group, so that we all move on progressively. And for me, in all that space, there's an openness and a trust in data that we will continue to build on. It's not immediately there. It's not necessarily always accessible, but I think it will grow in its shape, its nature, and inevitably in its complexity. And I think what will be very interesting as well, then, once we get over the hurdles of the norms, the data we normally use, how we will connect different types of data going forward and get completely different insights that we might not have considered.
Yeah.
There's a world of possibility for us there.
That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Breda. And Sue, would you like to come in?
Yeah, so I'm really big. So those people who do know me, I am really big on collaboration, and I think it's a key part of the improvements that we need to recognise cross industry, cross sector, and equally BAE Systems are part of the task force, along with Joe and Martin and all the others that are involved. Because I think what we recognise is that, you know, nobody has the silver bullet to this, you know. And I was quite interested when we go back to the Mentimeter. There were some people on there that some people had identified themselves as leading edge in data and analytics, and I'd be really interested in kind of having that kind of conversation that says, well, there's lots of organisations out there that are tackling these problems, and for me, the benefit of the task force, the collaboration, is in that sharing of thinking, because it's going to need all of us collectively to work together to do that sharing, understand the lessons, understand where we've got real opportunities, and collaboration can add to the benefit that we're going to deliver overall across all of these projects and programs, and that's got to be better for everybody.
I think that's spot on, and I think collaboration isn't violently agreeing with everyone. I think part of the good part of collaboration is the challenge you get from others and the good ideas. So I think that's hugely positive. Fantastic. So if you just have one more question, and maybe we'll return to Mentimeter. So I'd like to ask the panel, what does good look like in data analytics? What's your nirvana?
Oh, nirvana.
It was weird, because actually in London 2012 we coined that the 80-20 rule. About 80% of your project controls should be forward looking, and 20% should be looking at the past.
Yeah.
I think everyone said we achieved it at London 2012. I don't think we quite did, but you know, I always say that actually project controls are see into the future, and to me that's what it should be. And actually that 80% of showing you what's coming around the corner for me through analytics is, you know, and not just the forecasting through your tools. Actually, you know, with the you know, with analytics, it's really forecasting, you know, based on you know, intelligence rather than just the systems doing it. So the 80% in a very precise way, I think, for me.
That's really super. I think that was the one place it was done properly, Zoe.
Yeah.
because ever since then I haven't come across anyone that has got rid of progress meetings and they had prognosis meetings, which is what we need, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And who have we got up next?
Is that what you said, Sue? Did you say sorry, did you say they had prognosis meetings?
Yes.
Oh,
So
what a fantastic phrase.
all the progress has taken us done. You know, so I've done a jolly good job this month. I don't care what's coming up that we need to look at. Yeah.
Great. I really like that.
It does have a different impact on your reporting though as well, because you've really got to get everyone together and get them thinking in the right way, not just scribing. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and so yeah, what's Nirvana? Crikey, we're setting the bar probably where we should there, but I think Sue's real promotion of collaboration, that's something that's so much at the heart of what we're doing at the moment. And I think if you can get those, it comes down a lot to trust and behaviours, that real human interaction. Actually, I think when you can get that really working well, and you get that real trust between people. So it sounds like you had that at 2012. To me, then I think that's when the magic really starts to happen. And I think having that passion actually to drive things like this forward is really key. Because it's tough, it's really tough, isn't it, to change these things? And you have to be quite brave, I think, because I think, again, Breda mentioned, we don't always like what we see. You have to have that courage to be prepared that things might look a bit uglier than you thought. But it's only by having that courage and trust to move forward that will really make a difference. So I'd love not to lose sight of that as well.
That's really important. The human part of data analytics. Yeah. That's really, really good. So, Sue, how about you?
So it's interesting because I think I take a slightly different perspective. There probably is an ultimate nirvana, and I guess if I took that up to the highest levels, is that we're delivering major complex programs, time, cost, quality, etc., and everybody's happy. Nirvana is that Disneyland kind of place that everything goes right first time, and we've made the right decisions. But when I stopped and thought about the question that you asked and said, what does nirvana look like? I actually think there's probably different perspectives, because it depends on the lens that you're looking at life through in data and analytics. So I wonder if there's a different view of nirvana if you happen to be the project control person in an organization, compared to the project delivery manager who's receiving the outcomes from the analytics, and having the decisions that need to be made. What's his nirvana or her nirvana? Because it could be very different to that project controller, and the customer's nirvana, something else. So I wonder, in terms of thinking about that, without trying to draw a Venn diagram or anything, but I'm trying to think about what are all the lenses of nirvanas that need to be collated together and pulled together to give a more holistic view of what that picture is. I don't think there's one answer.
That's fascinating. That's one for the task force, I think, don't you? So Breda, how about you?
Sue, I absolutely agree. I think there are layers to this nirvana, and if I had to pick them off one by one, I'd probably go in this sequence. I would like the data processing to be, the data collection through different types of technology to be more automated, and to take away that drudgery of picking one file up, processing it through a machine and out the other side of another one. So I would love to see how we can use our data analytics and other AI and machine learning tools to help with that, because that takes away a layer of the awfulness that we have to go through. And when you then take that away and it's a more reliable data source, you eliminate the data validation step, and the machines can automatically tell you whether you've got an error in or not. So for me, that's another wasted time effort, that we're checking someone's homework that we can check we no longer have to do. I long for that day. We're not quite there yet. And then once you start getting that trust in that data entry and the improvements in that, you can then move into a layer where the analytics will actually be continually more reliable, trustworthy. You've got more confidence in the data you've got. The automation of reports can be generated, and the predictive outputs can be presented to you. But I'm going to overlay all of that and say I still firmly believe that people deliver projects and not the machines, and we have to bring that human intelligence and interface to everything we're doing. Yes, we can teach the machines a lot. I think we're a little bit away from that, and I still think that we have an awful lot of creative insight to bring to projects that when you look at the data, you'll say, but still I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
And something different may make or break a project, but I think we still have that in us as humans to drive something different that a regular process might not give us. And we need to be open-minded to that, but still to understand the data sources we have.
I think that's so important, Bruno. I'll probably be shot in the head through this because being a program manager, but it's not all about processes. In fact, I actually don't like processes quite a lot. What I do like is that intellectual thinking and conversations that come up with brilliant solutions by very creative people that you could never put a process around. And I think in the UK, which is why I'm so proud to be the president of APM, we are the best intellectual project managers in the world. We really know our stuff, and we don't lean and we don't depend on process to sort of buoy us up. Of course we use it. It's a tool, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think that's really super important for all of us. Whether it's project controls, data analytics, or pure project management. Well, it's been a fantastic conversation. Should we, Martin, the master of are you still there, Martin? You're going to show us what we're doing now in Menticom?
Yeah, it's back again.
Lovely.
Can you see that slide?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Cool. So if you get back onto Menti again, we've got 33 votes on that. So please get involved. We'll push up to 69, I think, which is where we were before. So please get involved. So this is a good question for the panel, I think, Sue, about,
it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So what does this mean for people?
Yeah.
Do they need to just tweak what they're doing, or is it something that is massively different?
Yeah. Let's have views on that, shall we? Zoe, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, and actually, I've been talking about this actually quite a lot with my team. I think project actually is quite a good standard, and we've been involved with the British standard. I think the single disciplines that sit within controls are all, within the tools and the systems and the way that we're using them are all very good. What we need to do is look at how we integrate them better. So actually the project controls disciplines themselves, I think, planning through Primavera, the cost tools that we have now, which build in metrics, is about how we get these all to work together. And I think that's the major change that we need, is how we bring all that analytical data together. I think I tip the major change piece. I think that we don't do very well from a data analytics perspective is pull, construction metrics and metrics from the source project delivery. And I think that's where we're missing the change, because there is lots of great data that's generated on a site or on our projects, but actually how we pull that into our project controls tools, there's a definite gap there, and how we bring that to the sort of to the client level. So it's all there somewhere, all the data, but it's actually trying to pull that into a coherent data pool or data analytic lake, or whatever we want to call it. It's about how we integrate it, and I think that's the really important part to me that we haven't now. But the actual disciplines themselves, I think from where I sit in MACE is to a pretty high standard. It's just pulling it together.
Lovely, thank you, Zoe. And who'd like to go next? Sue, would you like to sort of give us your opinion?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and we're talking about this through our project control community within BAE Systems as well. And I think we recognise it is going to evolve quite significantly, but it's probably going to take some time to do that. I think what we're recognizing certainly is that balance that we talked about earlier between, you know, there's massive digitization projects going on, you know, in most businesses now. So there's lots and lots of appetite for dashboards, which is absolutely fantastic, and they're great, and I love a good dashboard myself. But we've also got to really think about and spend some time educating the organisation, educating ourselves in terms of what are the right things that we want to measure, what gives us the right insight to the critical elements of the programmes that we're delivering. And the danger is of, and I guess, you know, trying to not drive it down some of the barriers that we've got to overcome, but is thinking about, you know, it's that education of the organisation that we have got to get right, because otherwise the danger is we know there's masses and masses of data out there. You know, what we've got to think about is how we use that data effectively. So I think it's going to evolve, but I think we need to really consider that we don't go too fast, that actually we create a different set of problems with data overload and information overload that actually doesn't give us the insight that we need to make the right decisions, and therefore, you know, adds extra risk into a program.
Lovely. That's a point really well made, Sue. Thank you. And how about you, Breda?
So I'm fascinated by this particular one because I flip between radical and not radical at all on my position on it. But I do think we're in for major change. And what I really feel is that we have good, solid controls professionals and capability and experience in our industry today who don't have the newer Python or database skills that the cohort of data analysts have. And we're putting them together in our industry to work collaboratively so each can learn from the other. And over time, I would expect that the newer cohorts of our controls professionals will come ready-made with those skills, so that they don't have to be paired up with someone who has them. You know, we're all changing and our roles keep changing, but I do think we need the mix in the profession and for it to continue to evolve and change. How I see it currently is those who find themselves in the reporting space tend to have more of the deeper analytics and more of the IT skills for database mining and analytics than say a risk professional would, even though risk people are incredibly astute at managing complex data models. It's a different thing when you're reporting and dragging different information from different sources and different types of platforms. So there's a mixed skill set there. And I do think we're just at the cusp where there could be a complete divergence or convergence. And I think it's up to the individual to choose how they progress themselves. It's not necessarily something you can teach an existing professional without them having interest in it. They have to have that passion and interest themselves to progress it further. And similarly, if someone is just of a data skill set, they don't have the experience to interpret correctly what's in front of them. They will do the numerics and the math on it, but they may not get the so what, the question in front of them. And that's the piece I'm trying to get our industry and our clients and our teams to think about. The so what does it mean? We can all pull together a quick dashboard that gives us the count and the numerics, but and so what does that mean? And I don't look back, I want you to look forward and say, what does that mean in the context of where this project is going to end up? Are we going to be time over budget, etc.? They're the normal questions, but the deeper so what questions are around, are we getting the benefits? Are we putting something else at risk? Are we changing something fundamental in how we operate if we you know, change our approach to something? So you only get those responses with actually the experience of delivery. So for me, I'm still mixed on how it progresses. It absolutely is changing.
Oh, fantastic answer. Thank you. And Joe, any thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, there's been some really full answers there. I think for me, the thing that comes out of what Breeda's just said, and Sue mentioned this actually, around you know, rather than just having dashboards because the data's there, you know, what are the questions we're really trying to answer? What is it we need to know? What are those lead indicators? What is the prognosis we're really looking to understand? And I think I don't have all the answers to that, I'm afraid, but it's just not to underestimate how difficult that is actually, and just to make sure that we're not only, you know, monitoring it because we can, or because it's the, you know, or because it's what we've always done. And again, Sue, maybe back to your point about that real, you know, the real sort of intelligence and you know, the insights that come from experience in project delivery, but just knowing what questions to ask. I just don't think we should underestimate how difficult that is sometimes. And again, you know, maybe some more focused work around that would help us collectively, because I don't suppose it varies that much across you know, organizations or even industries. There's probably so much more we could be sharing around this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's definitely sector agnostic, for sure. Okay, Martin, have we got any more Menti com slides? Oh,
How should we prepare?
this is interesting.
So keep voting, everybody. We've only got 28 so far. Please go on to Menti and place your vote.
This speaks well to our skills shortage, doesn't it?
And I guess that's quite interesting, given the conversation that we've been having so far, is the recognition that we do need data and analytics. There's the whole conversation about how we bring that together with the people who are in planning and project controls. But I think it's also broader than that. So we've also talked about the organisation, the enterprise, whether it's, you know, your own organisation, your supplier, your customer, that there is a need to upskill a wealth of people, I think, in terms of data and analytics, not just from those that produce it, but those that use it as well, and those that are, you know, making decisions on the basis of it. So for me, I'd be interested in delving down further into the upskill to understand what do people, you know, what do people interpret that as, and do they see it in the same way that, you know, we're certainly looking at it as a broader educational piece.
No, I agree, and I think it's as much a mind and actually a people part of how we look at our data as it is an analytical thing. And I think, I mean, we've done a couple of sort of big transformational change pieces, and actually it's getting people to think differently first of all before you even buy the software or you know, it's how you use your data and how you transfer it. And I think if you've got the hearts and minds of people early in any of the jobs that we do or any of the projects or clients that we work with, then that's half the battle, because if you lose them from the outset, you're never going to be able to get your data in the right place.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. I think as a parent too, that this gives me hope, because all those hours spent by my two kids on gaming is going to pay off. There was a reason they're doing it. I tell you, I've never seen anyone text as fast with two thumbs in my life. My daughter can do it without even looking at the screen. It's scary.
and watch a YouTube video and play Minecraft at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a skill.
Skill set. How do you write that into a job description of the future?
Oh, lovely. Okay, Martin, should we have a look at the next one? How do we feel about it? Or how do we feel about IT, is that?
So it's about project data analytics.
Ah, okay.
How do you feel about it? Right, okay. How do we feel about it?
I like the "I will be embracing it" numbers. I think that plays to your sort of psychological bit, Zoe, that you get people interested in it.
There's only 8 on there so far. I think there's a bit of lag on Mentimeter tonight for some reason. So keep voting. You'll see a landscape at the back of each of those votes as well, and that just shows you the distribution. So if I just put the mouse over the top, it just shows you who's voting what.
There's an interesting point that's come up on the chat around what we were talking about before from Jazz. I apologise if I pronounced that wrong, about what changes, so as well as upskilling individuals, what changes do you foresee in organisational and inter-organisational processes and organisational contractual structures to facilitate open and goal-driven data sharing? That's a really interesting question.
It is quite difficult to answer.
I think quite difficult to answer, but I think that they've got to go from, I think we've got to think about this in its broadest perspective. They've probably got to go hand in hand, because as digitisation comes in more, as the collaboration, the need for data sharing gets bigger and bigger across the organisations, as we're trying to make sense of complex situations and environments, we're going to need to make sure that we have operating models that support that. So I think it's another big space for us as organisations to step into, that says we've got to maybe think differently about how we establish our contractual structures.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. So we've got one more. Oh, Hugo, what is stopping you?
This is back to your final question, I think, Sue. So this was a question you're going to place to the panel, but it's whether you want the audience first and then you can discuss it.
Yeah, should we do that? Yeah. So this is saying really what are the blockers to this transformation, and what can we do about it? Quite heavy. It's a knowledge thing. But it then equally compared with just not having enough time, having different priorities. Oh, definitely not having enough time. What does the panel think of those?
What do I think? I think that I'm too busy, and the time factor is quite an interesting one.
I'm looking at that. I'm agreeing. Gosh.
Yeah, and I do, and I sit there and I go, every conversation we've been having this week is about the number of meetings that are in the diary and how we're going to get time to do the improvements that we want to make. I absolutely agree, and I think the challenge we've got to give ourselves is, if we don't know, we are going to fall further behind in terms of the benefits that we know that we can achieve through doing this. So there's a little bit around how do we invest now, and we recognise that we've got to make the time within our organisations, and think about it as part of our normal business improvement approach that we should be doing it all the time in terms of our evolution. So for me, I think we've got to start knocking down the barriers that we see, and that could be through thinking about the benefits that you can deliver here and now. What are some short-term benefits that you can deliver? And that plays back to the conversation we were having earlier around, if we can demonstrate and show people that actually there is real value in doing this, because the outcome, that they're going to see is going to feel different, it's going to increase things. I think the time factor is one that would melt away eventually.
Yeah.
I think for me, and I say this quite a lot, and we sort of, I've coined this strategy of doing the basics brilliantly. I think to do analytics world, you need to do the basics brilliantly, and I see a lot of organisations that haven't even got to that level of understanding. So actually, I think once you get the basics done and the right data sets, the overlay to a certain extent is much easier. And I think, you know, you start in those little steps of making sure that you get the right disciplines in early, which allows you to get to the end game and thinking about, you know, the end point of it. And I think there's a rush to get to the analytics and the clever part, but there isn't the want or need to do the boring bit, which is actually just getting your projects operating to a certain level early in that journey. I think people come to it too late as well, which I think is always a shame, because if you get those good disciplines in early, then it does make it much easier.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, particularly I think design management and cost estimating, which are really, really the basics. If you get those right, generally you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zoe. Breda, any thoughts?
So I've just been monitoring the short-term focus line there that's been moving up and down a little bit, and now as the lack of strategy plan takes over, for me they're very interconnected, as with the organizational vision. So what that means to me is that each organization needs to know where it wants to end up in terms of intent. It may not know how to get there, but there are always steps to take to get to that position. The short-term focus is probably the nature and duration of projects, of specific type of projects, and the urgency, usually contractually, to get things done in the way they get traditionally done, which means you don't have that creativity or thinking time to apply something new or different, or the capacity to run a new method in parallel with your traditional way of working to see how things can improve and progress. So it does take guts and appetite to embed these changes, and it does take senior leaders to sponsor these changes and drive. And it's okay to fail kind of approach. You've got to try it before you can determine whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So for me, unblocking the ability to try new things really helps. And I know internally in Jacobs, we're doing a lot around enabling innovation in the analytics space, irrespective of the type of data that is being used, for people to try and share what they have learned and to collaborate and put their little mini products, if you like, out there in the open internally, so we can all tap into them and say, oh, that's interesting, I never thought about that. So for me, it's creating that dynamic thinking, the sharing culture and the innovation culture that I think all organizations need now. And when you start doing that, you'll actually build on the open door. You can push it a bit more further open each time. But for me, every time I look at this, it's about individuals having a passion to drive that, whether they're in a leadership role, opening the doors, or whether they're in regular roles in an organization, pushing because they've got interest. And that interest is what will really, really reshape our industry.
Lovely, thank you. And Joe, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I mean, it's interesting around the time, isn't it? Because very often, you know, we're in that cycle of, you know, if we could carve out just even small bits of time to start to move us on this journey, you know, I know it would make us more efficient, more effective. So to some extent, we're in that cycle of, you know, not having time to improve. And, you know, I think that it's easy to say, I know, but, and again, I think Sue mentioned it, you know, that we are constantly looking at how we carve out enough time to be working on improvement whilst, you know, delivering our biggest programme yet and preparing for winter floods. You know, you have to keep doing it all, but, you know, we're focusing on what we can do. I think things like, you know, the organisational vision and appetite. I'm certainly fortunate in our organisation that we have a great appetite for improvement and change. And I know I'm fortunate to be in that environment. But I think, you know, even when maybe that's less so, I'm hoping that things like the task force, you know, that is pulling together some you know, fantastic organisations who are really leading the way in some of this work and demonstrating the value. You know, this is quite a compelling case about the bottom line, about efficiency and effectiveness, and improving so many quality standards through moving towards this. And I'm hoping with it, like I say, with things like the task force, it'll make it easier for people to be involved, or at least to understand what the journey can be. And one thing that we're looking to do, working with Martin actually, is to, you know, just start putting some people through an apprenticeship. They're small steps, you know, but it's lighting little fires. And if we can start to create some of those change agents across the organisation, and just slowly start to upskill, it won't change overnight, but we can, you know, we will build the momentum. I know we will.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jo. And on that very positive note, I think we're now going to go to the audience for questions. Is that right? Yoshi, are you pulling them all through on chat?
Some more questions, I think, in terms of meetup, but we can go through that as well. I think it's worth saying as well, Sue, from that last one, things were moving around quite a lot. So I think that just demonstrates that there's a large sort of divergence in views on it. So there is no consensus on it, I think, basically. Yeah. Right? So we don't actually know what's stopping our organisations, I think, and that is quite damning, really. You know, I think we need to understand between all of us, and that's what the task force can start to tease out, what's stopping us from doing it. Yeah. So Yoshi, if you want to go for it, and then I'll go back to Menti.
Yeah, sure. So the first question I got was, can the Infrastructure and Projects Authority sponsor a data standard?
I think they are looking at it already. They've got this Project X, which is their research project, and it's looking at how we actually work with data. How far that's all being published, I don't know, but it would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? It's a very good question.
Another question, along with upskilling the individuals, what change do you foresee in organizational and inter-organizational processes and organizational and contractual structures to facilitate open and goal-driven, useful data sharing?
I'll pass that one to the panel.
So one of the changes I'm seeing already around that is very much about clients specifying in contracts of the future the data that we collectively provide, they will use for industry norms. And some of our clients are obligated now, I can't remember the name of a government directive, I'm sure Martin will fill me in on it, that they have to share their data back to the government. So it will be a part of our contractual obligation going forward that it is their data and they will share that data. So I think that is a big change coming. And I think it's always been there for them to use. It's just becoming more obvious and more targeted in how it's going to be used going forward. And how that then flows down into subcontracts right down the supply chain will be interesting to see how that develops, because it is all the collective data. Organizations, in terms of their construct and how, I'm not quite sure of the answer yet, but I do think organizations change quite dynamically, both with the nature of work, with the economic situation, and with the types of skills that will respond to current markets. So I don't think it's just data analytics that will change organizations, but it will certainly become a core component of everything that is done. And I'm sure it's already changed many other organizations, whether you call it data analytics or digitization or any of the variants that we're currently discussing at the time all the time. All of those things have happened, and they've happened radically in the finance business and travel, every other business. Ours just seems to be the one where we're building stuff that it's lagging behind and it's not connected right throughout the supply chain. And I think that's the part that's coming. And the whole BIM model world is driving a lot of that evolution. Slow evolution, but it's still driving it forward.
Lovely, thank you, Breda. Anyone else like to comment on that one?
No, I think Breda covered that.
Yeah, I was just, oh, sorry, go on.
That's all right. I was just saying, I think Breda covered that really well, and I'd shared my views earlier in terms of some of the changes that I think we're going to see around this space. I think we need to challenge ourselves a little bit more and think differently in the contractual structures, the organisational structures that we put in place, thinking with the end in mind.
And actually making it easy as well to collect data. I think some of the times when we've struggled to get good data out of our projects is because we haven't made it easy for our subcontractors to do it, or we've made it expensive or difficult and they haven't got the skill set. So actually I think that there is something about making data collection easier for them, you know, as you know, project or clients to enable that to happen as well.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you.
I throw something in as well. So I think that if we look at this data, I think government can really take the lead on this, and government is the biggest custodian of project delivery data, and they see it as government data that's all sensitive, that's got some embarrassing stuff in it. If we start to just flip that upside down, and that's what the national data strategy is actually saying, is there is so much value in this for UK PLC to spin companies up to do all this clever stuff. But I don't see government yet standing forward to say, right, let's open up our data through some trusted environments. There might be a data trust or something similar. Let's start to give people access to it so we can start to predict risk. We can start to understand predisposition to variance. All these other things we've been talking about. The government is the biggest custodian in this stuff. And I've been on this campaign for 3 or 4 years and I've struggled to get anywhere with it, really. And I think that's something we need to really push through the task force.
Yeah, I think so.
What is the way of opening up that data in a trusted environment so we don't go embarrass people, but we do get a load of benefits from it?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Thank you, Martin.
Some more questions here, guys. So this is a question from Russell. So paradigm shifts such as this movement for data-driven approaches often meet resistance, simply as a diversion from the status quo, especially when the previous systems require significant investment. It can be seen as wasteful or bruised to egos, vanities, to then consider something different. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a long question. My thought number one, and I can see it in the chat to reflect on it.
You want me to repeat?
Yes. Oh, I found it from Russell. Let me have another look.
So I'll repeat while you're going over it. So paradigm shifts such as this movement for data-driven approaches often meet resistance and are diversion from the status quo, especially when previous systems required significant investment. It can be seen as wasteful to then consider something different. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I completely get it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of layers to that, in my opinion. All change requires a paradigm shift. It just depends on the depth of dimensional change you want to implement. And some of it you can, bring about more gently, and others it's rapid and it hurts, and you just have to go through the pain barrier. But it just depends on your organizational approach to that. And I can't predict what that will be for anyone. But it also depends on each individual's mindset around whether they're willing and able to adjust, whether you go slowly or not, as the case may be with the change. So for me, there's always a two-way street in change, no matter what the type. And delving into the systems and the data part of it, yeah, we've all been in environments where we've invested a huge amount in systems, and they last. Systems only last these days generally for the life of a project, and I'm talking about a reasonable length project, not the very long-term nature ones like you may get in the MOD space. But because the technology is changing and databases are changing, and all of that platform that we operate on is changing, you can't expect to invest in the piece of kit today for it to last you 20 years. It's no longer that obvious. It just obsoletes so rapidly now. So the investment needs to be in how you connect data, how you structure your data norms, and how you rapidly analyze it. So databases exist because they house data. The data analytics needs to overlay on top of that and connect bits that may not have been connected before. I get the investment may be legacy, may be wasteful, may be considered a pet project. But ultimately, all of these things have a life and they do obsolete, and they're rapidly being replaced by newer technologies by the day. And that's going to continue, I think.
Yeah. That's a very, very good answer, Breda. It's built-in obsolescence is a real thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the rate of people say there's only one constant in life, and that's change.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just so true. Okay, any other questions, Yoshi?
We've got a couple more. So this is a question from Ken. Which of the current standard forms of construction contract has a clause about data sharing?
Ooh.
Expand on that one, Ken.
I don't think I know the answer to that.
Don't think I do either.
No, I don't
I
think
mean, I'm certainly not aware of it. I mean, we're building in, BIM standards. You touched on that earlier, Breda, to our contracts, so that, the data format and everything is contractually agreed. But yeah, I'm really not aware of that, I'm afraid, but I don't know whether it exists.
I mean, there are clauses under NEC, I suppose, from subcontractors and how you collaborate on a within your contract space. I don't think there's too much around, I suppose, data security and who uses your data. I think it's quite been expanded to that. I don't think. I've just actually gone through a works information recently, and actually I think where information security and data security is a big part of the contracts that we've just let, but I don't know if it expands to sharing and collaborating across outside of the contractual space.
A brilliant question. I have been writing in Z clauses for years. Whether they've been used or not is completely immaterial, about the fact that if I was writing as a client or on behalf of a client, that any data you submit to us, we will use in the business for the purpose of running our business and the business of running projects. So I've always been clear around that we will use that and explain that what they give us is real and it's for us. And in the newer contracts, we are putting more in around the data security and the need for your data as a supplier to go into a data lake for the purposes of the client's intelligence and analytics. So they are weaving themselves in. Whether there is a specific, I don't think there is a specific, but in the other parts of the contract that I don't normally play around in, other than the control section, I'm sure there are other data security and data provisional requirements in there, because controls isn't the only place where data comes from.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got 5 more questions here, guys. So what do you think is the best way to incentivize data sharing between organizations, customers, vendors would be? Could it be monetized by a service provider?
Good question.
I think that there's always I suppose, a money saving element to it. And I think, the standardization of how we build data sets and, how quickly we can set up those environments is a really important part of any project or program. It can be 3 months, it can be years and years to get to a good analytical state. So I think if there is a cost saving or a benefit to any organisation or client, I think that there's a real incentive for that. And actually we've tried to standardise our interfaces between software, so actually you can get into the environment much quicker and get your environment set up. So I think that's got to be an incentive for anyone, really, and to be able to collaborate with how they're building, data sets and analytics.
Thank you, Zoe. Anyone else like to come through on that one? Okay, Yoshi, shall we move on to the next one with a view to sort of ending the questions about 8:15?
Okay, yep, sure. So I think you kind of asked this question already. I think Martin kind of touched on this. But as the largest consumer of construction activities in the UK, what role can government play in the leadership of data collaboration?
I think the easy answer is it should lead it. Really.
Move on.
I think they are. I mean, they're making steps. I just don't.
Yeah.
they're probably quick enough. You know, the standardization of your WBS, so actually we can consistently track data across lots of different projects. They're sort of teetering on the edge of it, but you know, with the people that are here today, I think it's within our gift to make sure that we're working smarter together to make sure we drive that. You know, because it isn't probably moving as quick as probably some of the organisations and clients and businesses out there. So yeah, I think they get that it needs to be done and they're making those steps, but it's nowhere near quick enough. And I think, you know, it's sort of resonating through some of the major programs at this point, but you know, it's probably not been determined enough to make a difference quite yet, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's well put.
Conscious that there are more project managers working in SMEs than in big organizations, I'd be interested to hear what the panel think could and should to help SMEs falling further behind as AI gains momentum.
That's an interesting one. Do we agree that SMEs are going to fall behind, or do we think they're more nimble and agile that they'll actually surge ahead of the big corporations?
I think some of them are quite innovative, actually.
Yeah.
And driving a lot of capability where they've got the flexibility and creativity to do so, and they don't have any of the red tape of a major organization necessarily. Yeah. So I think they have that edge in that respect, and I know certainly we partner with SMEs because they bring that sense of dynamism and different thinking that is really helpful.
I think that's right, and the government contracts now specify up to 40% SMEs to get through the procurement hurdle. So in a way, I think they might not feel protected, but they are being protected.
How often have there been seen organisations with the appetite for change having willing individuals, but the barrier is skills and experience?
Yeah, I think we covered that one, didn't we, when we went through we thought skills is the big issue.
Yeah, I think skills is one. I think there's a number of I guess barriers, and we explored a couple of them through this panel session tonight, but there are lots of others, and I think it's about understanding and coming up collaboratively with how you're going to address some of those barriers. I remember doing a conference years ago. It was actually around knowledge sharing, and it was really interesting in terms of the barriers that people see and openly shared around knowledge transfer. But then when we gave them an exercise to do, they went straight into the barriers and they used the same barriers again. So it goes back to a bit of a mindset piece for me around this. It's how do we educate a wealth of people across the organisations to recognise that actually they've got to work together to tackle all of these different barriers. You know, skills and experience is one of many that we're trying to address, and I guess it's just trying to better understand in the organisations what are the kind of in what kind of sequence you can knock down some of those barriers, because if you knock down one, it might have a ripple effect and knock down 10 others. So how do you unlock the one that's actually going to let you kind of get the most progression? And I think that's the bit that we're all tackling with on lots of fronts.
Yeah.
And I think in an organisation that's got appetite for change and willing individuals, you know, that's a great start. I'd say they're some of the more key, ingredients that you'd want to have in place. You know, I think you'll find a way if you've got that as your starting place.
Absolutely.
I've got one last.
I think there individuals just need to be brave. If you think you can do something, you just go do it. People do it. So you ask for forgiveness later.
The breeder said so.
Yeah.
have to be expensive. I think that everyone seems to think it's a huge investment to do some of this stuff, and actually the biggest successes that I've had with my team actually have been the cheapest solutions that we've rolled out. You know, and it's that impact that it brings quite quickly as well. So, you know, it doesn't have to be with a huge price tag to get this right. You know, some of the snazzy tools are potentially some of the last things you do.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
There's that current slide as well that's up at the moment. I think that really drives it home, right? So there's a lot of people in Power BI at the moment, which is a different version of Excel, right? So you can now start to visualize things a lot better than you could in Excel before, but it's still largely descriptive analytics. So it's looking backwards. The really clever stuff, once you get into the rest of those things there, especially things like automation, where you start to improve your data quality and your data feeds, right? There's not a lot of people in it. So I think it's back to this vision, this appetite thing, which was on a previous slide. If you've not got the appetite inside the organization, you will not be driving this forward. So I think it's up to the top of the organization to say, right, if this is the vision and this is the expectation, what do we need to do to get ourselves sort of onto this path, and what do we need to do to get us there? And some of these capabilities, you must be deploying them if you want to get to this nirvana that we've been talking about. So you need to be getting into automation, machine learning, and text analytics. And Python is going to take you there, or similar, you know, that sort of technology. And you can't just do Power BI, right? You've got to get into data pipelines that underpin it. So you need all the DAX stuff at the back, which is making sure you're checking your data quality on the way in. So yeah, I think that's a fascinating slide. That really rams it home, is that we are, you know, we're definitely not where we should be.
It's that natural evolution, isn't it, Martin? From
It is.
Excel into the analytics tools, and there's a whole suite of analytics tools, but they're all equivalent or similar in construct to Power BI at the moment. So I think the fact that it is moving, I think, is positive.
Yeah.
We build on that and take it further.
Yeah, and I'm finding, you know, some of the apprentices that we're working with at the moment, they're getting into all of this, and they're starting to drive the thinking inside of their organizations.
Yes. I am pleased with that. We have some in ours.
Yeah, yeah. So I think they become some of the pathfinders to show that this is not that scary. You know, you just need to be shown how to do it, and guided around problem solving, and then you can implement it. And I think a lot more organizations need to be stood in a march on this, because it's not actually that expensive or difficult to do it. You just need to know how to do it and need the appetite to do it.
Absolutely.
And I have one last question here, guys. Do you think that the body of knowledge and methods for project analytics will grow and be systemized enough to become an engineering in the future?
Interesting question. I don't know how far we've got with the BOK in terms of getting this thinking in, Martin. Do you?
I wrote, and I was told that it's not project management.
Okay.
So I wrote into them and said, you know, we need to be all over this, and they didn't pick any of it up. So I think, you know, I just thought they're not ready for it today. They're just not ready. The environment's not ready. And I've been on a crusade for a long time on this, and I think through the task force we're starting to now tip, right? There's a tipping point coming up, and then people will say, this is not project management or project delivery, this is an extension of our current tool sets. Now all this cool capabilities is coming out, we just need to adapt and make it all part of our jobs.
Make it work. Yeah.
And then I think it'll go into the body of knowledge. But yeah, I think it's too early at the moment. You know, they're not quite ready for it.
We can take baby steps to weave some of that in existing standards that we have influence in shaping.
Yeah.
And every step we make forward is positive, I think.
Yeah. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah. And I think if we share what we're doing as well, so going back to the collaboration piece that says, you know, if we recognize actually we can all add a little bit by sharing our thoughts, what we're working on, notwithstanding all the competitive advantages and things that have obviously got to be considered. But where we can share, we should share, and think about then how we can help each other, because it's collectively, by working together, we're going to create a voice for data and analytics, and that's going to make a difference. It's just small and steady steps, I think, at the moment, and then it will grow legs and it'll run.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think then, if everyone's happy, shall we end the questions there? And
Yeah, cool.
yeah, and take maybe some time to. I'm just going to try. I can't sum up all that wonderful conversation, but I was going to just pick up some points I think which are really pertinent that sort of stay with me. So the one is, going back to the very first question, how do data analytics and project control fit? I just love Breeda's view that it's a perfect fit. It's an absolutely perfect fit, and it's going to make us smarter. And then I think the breaking down boundaries, being able to trust the collaboration that Sue mentioned, all of that's we've got to connect people to data and data to other data, and grow with that story. Then in terms of what does good look like, again, we went to look at the future collaboration and trust and making magic, which I thought was a beautiful way of describing it. Be right the first time, being an aim for what we use data for, accepting different views, all having our own view of nirvana and what that looks like, and then having a collective nirvana view, which will just take us literally onto another planet. And really, to me, in this discussion, people deliver projects is absolutely spot on, and I think this task force, Martin, that you've created is going to do absolutely wonderful things. We talked about making time for this transformation. We all know we're very time starved at the moment. We spoke about doing the basics brilliantly, which I thought was a really, really good point. We can't forget the basics. If you let the basics go, that's when you really lose control. Zoe, as you know, of your projects, the basics are gone, you've lost it completely. I think the passion I've seen from everyone has been outstanding. And I think if you, as I said at the beginning, can infuse every person you meet on this subject, that's the beginning of this movement really, really taking place. And just to finish off then, really, I think be bold. Breeda, you said be bold and bolder, and we'll make this happen. It'll be really fantastic.